Hello and welcome to Movies That Move Me. My name is Elijah Winfrey. I'm your host. I'm also an independent filmmaker, and the reason for this show is not so much movie review, but more talking about the movies that make me want to make movies. Yeah, these are the movies that told me, hey, you need to start, actually acting on that dream, not just dreaming about it, right? So the movie I'm going to talk about today features my favorite actor of all time. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. That is Heath Ledger, and the movie is The Dark Knight from 2008. This movie had its wide release in the United States July 18th of 2008. Obviously, this was the sequel to Batman Begins, starring Christian Bale and Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman, another very talented actor. But Heath Ledger played the Joker in this movie. And there are some movies that you look at and you just know it's perfection. And to me, when it comes to playing a villain, I'm not talking about the specific villain, but playing a villain in general, there are, in my opinion, no one better than Heath Ledger playing the Joker. To me, that is a master class in villainy and how to play somebody who is crazy. Because to me, it's one of those things where like you hear like and forgive me here because I'm going to go a little bit crazy, but when it comes to crazy characters, you have some characters who are just like sporadic, right? And then you have other characters who are intentionally sporadic. And I felt like that's how Heath Ledger played the Joker. Like, yes, on the outside looking in, it looks like there's no plan, but there actually is a plan. And by the time you realize there's a plan, it's too late. But to me, Heath Ledger put on a masterclass in acting and in villainy in this movie. And obviously, he won the Oscar for this film. Now, this film's got a lot of different things going for it, but for me, the main thing is that opening sequence. The opening sequence of this film. You don't know where anything is going. Like, and that's the thing that I thought was so beautiful about this film. We all knew the Joker was going to be in it. They had done a really interesting digital marketing campaign, which that in itself deserves a whole episode on this show because the digital marketing campaign, how they hype people up for this film, was really cool because they got the public involved and it was kind of like a breadcrumb trail type deal, and that was super cool that they did it like that. You can find videos on YouTube about that. But the opening sequence of this movie, the Joker's going to show up, but you don't know where he is. And it's a bank heist as this movie opens up. And so you're getting all these different pieces to the puzzle, and then obviously the big reveal happens, and you go, oh my God, we're in for a treat now. That's how I felt about it when I first saw this movie, as I was like, oh, okay, this is different. Because to that point, the Jokers that I had, seen were Jack Nicholson in Batman 89. And of course, you also had the Jokers in Batman Beyond. You had Mark Hamill's Joker in the Batman animated series, but this was different. Very, very, very different. And I loved it. I thought that it was really well written, which is something that obviously I think about a lot because I talked about Watchmen a few episodes ago and Man of Steel a few episodes ago. Things I loved about those movies, and those movies came after this one, I believe both of them did, was that they were comic book movies that had some bite to them. It wasn't just about spectacle anymore. Like, we're here. We're here to tell you that these comic book movies are serious and they need to be taken seriously as cinema, not just as, get your popcorn and go enjoy for a couple hours. No, these are legit films, by legit storytellers. And this movie, I think, is one of those that helps set that tone. That, okay, for all these major award shows and everything, they're like, oh, maybe we actually should pay attention to some of these comic book films. And I know that right now a lot of people say there's comic book fatigue. And I sort of get that. I sort of understand where people are coming from on that. But back then, it wasn't like that, because they weren't coming out every single year with comic book films, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of them and, limited series and all that. Like, you had to wait around for them for a little bit. And, you just hope that it was worth it whenever they came out in the theater. And this one certainly was. Now, I can't talk about this movie without talking about, obviously, Heath Ledger's passing. One of the biggest disservices, in my opinion, is the fact that a lot of fans associated Heath Ledger's death with him playing the Joker. Now, Heath Ledger, he was a little bit out there when he was preparing for this movie. He did lock himself away to get the voice right. He did have a diary of the character because he wanted to, figure out the character's voice and things like that. But people went overboard with it, and they just said, you know what, it was because of the Joker that he died, or that he was always in character on set. And what I find interesting about that is if you actually listen to his co-stars, it wasn't that way. It wasn't that way. He was Heath when they said cut. He was the Joker when they said action. But people like their stories and they like to latch on to things and make things bigger than what they are. Heath Ledger's passing was an accident. It sucks that it happened for sure, because I would have loved to see what that man would have done moving forward. In fact, if you actually, there's a great documentary called I Am Heath Ledger, where his friends are talking about how he wanted to get into directing. He had actually dabbled a little bit in it prior to his death, but he wanted to actually get into the directing side of things. I would have loved to see what he would have done with that, and unfortunately, we won't get to see that. And obviously, more importantly, his family lost somebody they loved dearly. That's the most important thing. But to me, I just feel like his family must have been so disheartened by all the rumors and, for lack of a better term, BS that was thrown out about how this role killed him, because he loved playing the Joker. If you look at any of his interviews, he talked about how fun this was for him and how he couldn't wait to do it again if he got the opportunity to. And that was, of course, the original plan, was for him to be able to do it again. But I wanted to include talking about that just a little bit, because I feel like, as somebody who is a Heath Ledger fan, I take it as like a personal responsibility when I hear people saying that false narrative, to say, hold up, wait a minute. That's not what happened. Yes, Aaron Eckhart did an interview with Larry King where Aaron Eckhart talked about how Heath Ledger was in character with him, and Aaron Eckhart wasn't quite in character yet, and there was kind of a cool moment there between the two of them, but it wasn't like that all the time. This role didn't kill him. He killed this role, if I can say it like that. But to me, like I said, Heath Ledger, my favorite actor of all time. My favorite film by him is actually not The Dark Knight, though, believe it or not. My favorite film by him is Candy, which I have talked about in previous episodes before. Go check that episode out. Go check that movie out. Even if you don't watch my episode about it, watch that movie. It's an Australian film. I love that movie, Candy, which features Heath Ledger and Abby Cornish, if I'm not mistaken. But The Dark Knight is the one that we're talking about right now. Like I said, I love the writing in this. I love that opening sequence. To me, it really changed my mindset on how opening sequences go. How do you make it interesting? How do you draw those folks in? The digital marketing campaign, where they had breadcrumbs and they had things for people to solve, and web series type stuff and all that, when YouTube was still kind of in its infancy. They really used YouTube. They pushed it to the brim when it came to marketing is concerned. Online guerrilla type marketing. All those different things I think about when I think about this movie. But like I said, when I hit play on it and that first scene happens, I just sit back and I watch a master at work in Heath Ledger playing the Joker, a role he loved to play. And, I wish he was able to see the whole thing, because from what I understand, all he ever got to see was the opening sequence. He didn't get to see all the other stuff, and he didn't get to see the response that everybody had to his character, and how it has really been that, for lack of a better term, like career defining performance. But more so, every time somebody is a villain in a comic book movie, even if it has nothing to do with DC, if it's got nothing to do with Batman, people still bring up, is this villain as good as the Joker and Heath Ledger? So freaking cool, man. So freaking cool. And like I said, I would have loved to see what he would have done moving forward, and it sucks that we don't get to see that. And like I said, he is my all-time favorite actor. I've watched pretty much everything he ever did, and yeah, like he is somebody that I do find to be highly inspirational. And this movie, again, masterclass in villainy. You could even dare say a masterclass in acting. And Christian Bale, I really appreciate how Christian Bale didn't get upset, because he's Batman. And yet in this movie, everybody always talks about Heath Ledger. Christian Bale deserves a lot of credit for what he did as Batman, obviously, in his 3 movies, but he deserves even more credit for realizing when you're on a ride with your co-star and it's okay that you're not the focal point. He deserves a lot of credit for that. And I don't think people really think about that when they think about The Dark Knight and how it's been promoted and things like that. But again, for me, Dark Knight, that's my favorite movie of that trilogy. One of my favorites by Chris Nolan. And it is certainly a movie that moved me. If you agree with what I had to say, please comment below. If you disagree with what I had to say, please let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear them. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, my friends, hey, be good to yourself, be good to others in that order. I'll see you soon.